I stared at the small white stick in my hand, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. 2 pink lines. I can't believe it, I whispered, a smile stretching across my face until my cheeks hurt. I'm pregnant. It was perfect. Today was our 5th anniversary. I looked around the living room, checking the decorations one last time. The candles were lit, the table was set with Gavin's favorite roast, and I had the test hidden in my pocket, ready to be the best gift I had ever given him. The front door clicked open. I spun around, smoothing my dress. Gavin, you're home early. I rushed toward him, my arms open. He didn't hug me back. He didn't even look at me. He walked past me, his heavy footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor, and threw a thick manila envelope onto the dining table. It landed with a heavy thud right next to the candles. Gavin? I asked, my hands freezing in midair. What is this? Read it, he said. His voice was flat, like he was ordering coffee. I reached for the envelope, my fingers trembling. Is this a surprise trip for our anniversary? It's a divorce petition, Alara, he said coldly. I filed this morning. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I laughed nervously. That's not funny, Gavin. Stop it. Look, I have news too. I'm not joking, he cut me off, turning to face me. His eyes were dead, void of any warmth. You have 20 minutes to pack your personal effects and leave. Leave? I gasped, stepping back. Leave where? This is our house. My parents' inheritance paid for this house. Correction, a female voice drifted from the kitchen. It was your money. It is my house. I spun around. Lila, my personal assistant, was leaning against the doorframe. She was holding a glass of wine, my vintage wine, and wearing a silk robe that I recognized. It was the one Gavin had bought for me last Christmas. Lila? I choked out. What are you doing here? She took a slow sip of wine, smirking over the rim of the glass. Celebrating. Gavin and I have been waiting for this day for months. I looked from her to Gavin, my brain struggling to process the image. You and her? But she works for me. She's my friend. She works for me, Gavin corrected, stepping up beside Lila and wrapping an arm around her waist. And as for the house, do you remember that power of attorney documents you signed last year? The ones for the investment portfolio. I felt the blood drain from my face. Yes, you said it was to handle the taxes. I used them to transfer the property deed to a shell company, Gavin said, a cruel smile finally touching his lips. And that company just sold the property to Lila for $1. Legally, you owe nothing. You stole it? I screamed, the shock finally turning into agonizing pain. You stole everything from me? I took what I deserved for putting up with you, Gavin sneered. He checked his watch. 15 minutes left. No, I yelled. I reached into my pocket, gripping the pregnancy test. Gavin, listen to me. We're having I don't care what you have to say. He roared, slamming his hand on the table. The candles flickered violently. Get out, now. You can't do this. I sobbed, tears blurring my vision. I have nowhere to go. Layla walked forward, her heels clicking sharply. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. He said, Get out, Alara. You're trespassing. Get off me. I shrieked, trying to pull away. Gavin grabbed my other arm. Together, they dragged me toward the front door. I kicked and screamed, my heels skidding on the floor, but they were stronger. Gavin, please. I begged, looking into his eyes, searching for the man I married. Please, don't do this. You're pathetic, he spat. They shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, tripping over the threshold and falling onto the cold, wet concrete of the porch. My suitcase was thrown out after me, landing on my leg. Don't come back, Layla said, her voice dripping with venom. Gavin. I screamed one last time. He looked at me lying in the dirt, the rain instantly soaking my hair. He didn't blink. Slam. The sound of the lock clicking into place echoed like a gunshot. I sat there in the pouring rain, clutching my stomach, while the muffled sound of their laughter drifted through the door. My phone screen flash declined for the 3rd time. The taxi driver turned around, his eyes narrowing in the rearview mirror. Look, lady, he grunted, tapping the steering wheel impatiently. I ain't got all night. The machine says no, so it's no. Please, just try it one more time, I begged, my voice shaking from the cold. It's a joint account. There's over $50,000 in there. It has to work. It's dead. he snapped, reaching over and canceling the transaction. Get out before I call the cops. I didn't argue. I opened the door and stepped back out into the relentless rain. The cab sped off, splashing muddy water onto my shins, but I was already too wet to care. I walked blindly until my legs gave out, collapsing onto a wooden bench in a small, empty park. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the pregnancy test. The little plastic stick was warm from my body heat. A baby, I whispered to the empty air. I'm homeless and I'm having a baby. It felt like a cruel joke. Hours ago, this test was the start of a family. Now it felt like an anchor dragging me down. How could I feed a child? I couldn't even feed myself. I sat there until my teeth started chattering so hard I bit my tongue. I couldn't stay here. I stood up, my suitcase heavy in my hand, and started walking toward the flickering neon sign I had seen down the road. The Blue Moon Motel. The inn was burnt out, so it read the Blue Moon Hotel. I pushed open the glass door, a bell chimed weakly. Behind the counter sat an older woman with frizzy gray hair and a cigarette dangling from her lip. Her name tag read Mrs. Higgins. She looked me up and down, taking in my soaked designer dress and the mascara running down my cheeks. We don't rent by the hour, she said, her voice like gravel. I need a room for the night, I said, trying to stand tall, maybe a few nights. $40 a night, cash up front, no credit? She didn't even look up from her magazine. I don't have cash, I admitted, clutching the strap of my purse. My husband, he cut me off, today. Mrs. Higgins finally looked up. She snorted. Heard that one before. No cash, no room, get lost. Wait, I slammed my purse onto the counter. It was a limited edition leather bag Gavin had bought me in Milan. This bag costs $2,000. It's real leather. Gold hardware. Mrs. Higgins eyed the bag. She reached out a bony hand and ran a finger over the logo. She unzipped it, checking the lining. It's nice, she muttered. It's yours, I said, pushing it toward her. For a week's stay. She laughed, a harsh barking sound. I look like I care about fashion. I can't eat leather. She paused, looking at my desperate eyes. 3 nights, that's it. 3 nights? I protested. It's worth 10 times that. Take it or leave it, princess. It's cold outside. I swallowed my pride. It tasted bitter. Fine, 3 nights. She threw a heavy brass key on the counter. Room 4, don't make a mess. I grabbed the key in my suitcase, leaving the bag behind. It felt like I was leaving a piece of my old identity on that dirty counter. Room 4 smelled like stale smoke and bleach. The carpet was sticky and the wallpaper was peeling in the corners. I locked the door and slid the chain into place. I sat on the lumpy mattress, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. The silence of the room was louder than the storm outside. He threw me away, I whispered. The tears finally came. Not the shocked screaming from before, but a deep, gut-wrenching sobbing that made my chest ache. I curled into a ball, hugging my knees. I felt stupid. I felt weak. I had let him control everything, the money, the house, the accounts, because I trusted him. And he had used that trust to destroy me. My hand brushed against my stomach. I stopped crying. I took a shaky breath. You're in there, I said softly, pressing my palm against the damp fabric of my dress. If I gave up now, Gavin won. If I died on this street, he would probably laugh. No, I hissed into the darkness. I'm not going to die. And neither are you? I wiped my face with the back of my hand. The luxury was gone. The money was gone. But as I lay in the dark, I felt a tiny spark of anger ignite in my chest. It was small, but it was hot. I will survive this, I vowed to the peeling ceiling. And then I'm going to make him pay. Order up. Table 5 needs fries. Let's go. Marco's voice boomed through the kitchen, louder than the sizzling griddle. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand. My apron was stained with ketchup and grease, a sharp contrast to the silk blouses I used to wear. I'm going, I muttered, grabbing the heavy tray. My wrists ached. The ceramic plates felt like lead weights. I pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room. The smell of stale coffee and fried onions hit me, making my stomach turn. It had been 2 weeks since I started working at Marco's diner. 2 weeks of blistering feet and scrubbing dried egg off plates. As I moved toward table 5, my heel caught on a loose floor tile. The tray wobbled dangerously. Whoa there! A hand steadied the tray before I could drop it. It was Chloe, the veteran waitress who had shown me the ropes. She had tired eyes but a kind smile. "I got you, Alara. Breathe." "Thanks," I whispered, my heart racing. I'm so clumsy today." "You're not clumsy, you're exhausted," Chloe said, taking the tray from my hands. "Go pour coffee for the guy in the corner. It's lighter. I'll handle the heavy lifting." "I can do it, Chloe. I need the tips." "You need to not pass out," she countered firmly. "Everyone starts at the bottom, honey. But you don't have to break your back on the first step. Go." I nodded gratefully and grabbed the coffee pot. "You're a lifesaver." "I know," she winked. "Now go." I was pouring coffee when the bell above the door chimed. A gust of cold wind blew in, followed by laughter. "Table for two, please. Somewhere private." I froze. The coffee pot shook in my hand, splashing hot liquid onto the table. "Hey, watch it." The customer yelled. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, grabbing a napkin, but my eyes were glued to the door. It was Gavin and Lila. They were standing by the hostess stand. Gavin was wearing his navy bespoke suit, the one I had picked out for him. Lila was draped in a cashmere coat that looked suspiciously like the one missing from my closet. They looked radiant, rich, and happy. "Oh my God," I breathed. Lila laughed at something Gavin said, her hand resting possessively on his chest. It was the same chest I used to rest my head on. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. I couldn't let them see me like this stained apron, messy hair, smelling like grease. I dropped the napkin and bolted toward the kitchen. "Alara, what the hell?" Chloe called out as I sprinted past her. I burst through the kitchen doors and practically collapsed against the stainless steel counter, gasping for air. Marco turned from the grill, a spatula in his hand. He was a giant of a man with a thick beard and eyes that saw everything. "What is it?" He barked, though his voice wasn't angry. "You burn yourself?" I can't go out there," I choked out, pressing my hands to my chest. "Please, Marco, don't make me go out there." Marco stepped closer, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at my pale face, then glanced at the swinging door. "Who is it?" "A debt collector?" "My husband," I whispered. "And a woman he replaced me with." Marco's expression hardened. He moved to the small circular window on the door and peered out. He watched for a second, then turned back to me. "The suit and the blonde?" I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "They took everything, Marco. If they see me serving them burgers, they'll win. Please," Marco grunted. He pointed to a stool in the corner behind the dishwasher. "Sit, drink this." He shoved a mug of hot tea into my trembling hands. "Chloe," Marco yelled toward the door. Chloe put her head in. "You take the front section." "All of it. Alara stays on dishes for the next hour." "You got it, boss," Chloe said, glancing at me with concern before disappearing. "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't thank me." "Just scrub," Marco grumbled, turning back to his grill. But he moved his body so he blocked the view of me from the door. I sat on the stool, gripping the warm mug. Slowly, the panic began to fade, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache. I stood up and moved to the small window, peering through the glass. I saw them sitting in a booth. Gavin was cutting his steak, smiling at Lila. They were eating lunch with money that should have been for our future family. They looked so unbothered. They didn't care that I was homeless. They didn't care that I was pregnant. I watched Gavin laugh, throwing his head back. He thinks I'm gone, I thought. He thinks I'm dust. My grip on the window ledge tightened until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't sad anymore, I was furious. "Enjoy your meal, Gavin," I whispered to the glass. "Because I'm not going to hide in the kitchen forever." The only thing that kept me from screaming was the cheap, spiral-bound notebook hidden under the counter. Whenever the diner was empty or Marco was busy in the back, I would pull it out. I sketched buildings. Not the simple houses I saw on the street, but massive glass-walled skyscrapers that scraped the clouds. I drew bridges that looked like they were floating on air. It was the only time I felt like Alara again, not just the new waitress with the sad eyes. "Table 4 needs a refill," Chloe called out as she rushed past with a stack of pancakes. I shoved the notebook into my apron pocket, but it didn't fit all the way. On it? I grabbed the coffee pot and walked toward table 4. A man was sitting there alone. He looked out of place among the truckers and tired students. He was wearing a gray suit that fit him perfectly sharp, expensive, and intimidating. He had dark hair and eyes that were glued to a stack of blueprints spread out on the sticky table. He was rubbing his temples like he had a migraine. "Coffee?" I asked softly. He didn't look up. "Black, leave the pot." "I can't leave the pot, sir, but I can refill it," I said. He sighed, sounding annoyed. "Fine. Just pour." I leaned over to pour the coffee, but as I did, the heavy sketchbook shifted in my pocket. It slid out, hit the edge of the table, and landed with a thump right on top of his blueprints. It fell open to a page I had been working on for days, a spiraling museum design with a glass atrium. "Oh no," I gasped, nearly dropping the coffee pot. "I'm so sorry." I reached for the book, my heart hammering. If Marco saw me distracting a customer, I could get fired. "Wait," the man said. His hand shot out and covered the page before I could snatch it away. "Sir, please," I pleaded. "I didn't mean to drop it. I'll get you a fresh napkin." "Did you draw this?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was sharp, curious. I froze. "Yes, it's just a doodle. I'm sorry." He ignored my apology. He turned the book around, studying the lines. "This cantilever. The weight distribution would be impossible with standard concrete." "You wouldn't use concrete," I said without thinking. The architect in me woke up before I could stop her. "You'd use a steel truss system hidden in the interior walls. That way the glass looks weightless." He looked up at me then. His eyes were intense, dark brown and intelligent. He looked from my stained apron to my face, then back to the drawing. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm just a waitress," I said, pulling the book from under his hand. I hugged it to my chest defensively. "Please, I really need this job." "I'm not going to get you fired," he said. He closed his own file of blueprints, which looked messy and crossed out with red ink, and pushed them aside. "I'm Julian. I run Apex Development." My breath hitched. Everyone knew Apex. They built half the skyline. "I'm Alara," I whispered. "Alara?" He tested the name. "My team has been stuck on a facade design for the new library project for 3 weeks. We've been running in circles." He pointed a pen at my chest, where the notebook was. "That sketch you just tried to hide?" "It solved the problem in 5 seconds." "It's just a sketch," I insisted, stepping back. "I'm not a professional, not anymore." Julian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. He placed it on the table right next to a crisp $100 bill. "Real talent doesn't care about a resume, Alara," he said, his voice low and serious. "I need fresh eyes. Come to my office tomorrow morning, 9th floor. Ask for me." I don't have clothes for an office," I stammered, looking down at my grease-stained shoes. "I don't care if you show up in a trash bag," he said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "Just bring the sketchbook." He looked at me one last time, holding my gaze for a second longer than necessary. "Don't be late," he said. He walked out of the diner, leaving the bell chiming behind him. I stood there, clutching my notebook, staring at the black card on the table. For the first time since Gavin threw me out, the crushing weight on my chest felt a little lighter. The glass doors of the Apex Development Tower were so clean they looked invisible. I paused on the sidewalk, catching my reflection. The navy blazer I had bought at the thrift store for $5 was 2 sizes too big. I had pinned the back with a safety pin to give it some shape, but I still looked like a child playing dress-up. "You can do this," I whispered to myself, clutching my sketchbook against my chest like a shield. I pushed through the doors. The lobby smelled like expensive cologne and cold air. I walked to the reception desk, where a woman with perfect makeup was typing furiously. "Delivery entrance is around the back," she said without looking up. "I'm not a delivery driver," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm here to see Mr. Vance." She stopped typing and looked over her rimless glasses. Her eyes scanned my scuffed shoes, the loose blazer, and my messy bun. She let out a small, dismissive puff of air. "Mr. Vance is in a strategy meeting. He doesn't see walk-ins." "He asked me to come," I said, pulling the black business card from my pocket and sliding it across the marble counter. "Tell him Alara is here." She picked up the card, frowned, and picked up the phone. A moment later, she hung up, looking annoyed. 9th floor. Conference room B, don't touch anything on the way up. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, I heard shouting. "It's not working, Vicky. The client hates the facade." I walked toward the voices. The conference room door was open. Inside, 5 people in sharp suits were arguing around a large glass table covered in blueprints. Julian was standing at the head of the table, looking furious. He looked up and saw me. The room went silent. "You came," Julian said, his expression unreadable. A woman with a sharp bob haircut and a suit that cost more than my life savings turned around. This was Vicky. She looked me up and down, her lip curling in disgust. "Julian," she said, her voice high and sharp. "Why is the cleaning lady in here during a strategy meeting?" "We are trying to work." I felt the blood rush to my face. I gripped my sketchbook tighter. "She's not the cleaning lady," Julian said calmly. "She's the one who drew the solution on the napkin." Vicky laughed. It was a cruel barking sound. "Her? Look at her, Julian. She looks like she sleeps in her car. Did you find that jacket in a dumpster?" The shame hit me like a physical punch. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. I remember Gavin laughing at me in the rain. No, I thought, I am done running. I walked past Vicky, ignoring her. I walked straight to the whiteboard at the front of the room. I picked up a black marker. The smell of the ink was sharp and familiar. It smelled like control. "Hey, don't touch that," Vicky yelled, stepping forward. "Sit down, Vicky," Julian ordered. I uncapped the marker. "Your problem isn't the facade," I said, my voice gaining strength. I drew a quick straight line. "It's the load-bearing wall here. It's blocking the light flow. If you use a cantilevered truss system." I sketched the triangle supports rapidly. ... You can remove this wall entirely. The glass becomes the skin, not just a window." I stepped back. The drawing was rough, but the math was visible. The logic was perfect. The room was dead silent. The other designers were staring at the board. Vicky crossed her arms. That's expensive. And risky." "It's genius," one of the men at the table whispered. Julian walked up to the board. He traced the line I had drawn. Then he turned to me. He didn't look at my cheap clothes. He looked at my eyes. "Vicky says it's risky," Julian said. "It is," I admitted, meeting his gaze. "But safe buildings don't win awards." "And they don't solve problems," Julian smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached his eyes. "I like risky." He turned to the room. "Take 5, everyone." As they shuffled out, Vicky bumped my shoulder hard on purpose. "Don't get comfortable," she hissed in my ear. "Freak." When the door closed, Julian leaned against the table. "I can offer you a junior consultant role. It's a trial period. Minimum wage to start. If you survive 3 months, we negotiate a real salary." "I'll take it," I said instantly. "It won't be easy," he warned. "Vicky will try to eat you alive." "Let her try," I said. Julian nodded. "Welcome to Apex, Alara. Go see HR on the 4th floor." I walked out of the conference room. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass wall again. The jacket was still too big. My shoes were still scuffed. But my shoulders were back and my head was high. "Alara is back," I whispered to myself. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. "Go home, Alara. It's nearly midnight." I didn't look up from my drafting table. The only light in the office came from my desk lamp and the city glow outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I just need to finish this elevation for the West Wing," I muttered, erasing a line for the 3rd time. The shadows aren't right. A warm paper bag landed softly on top of my blueprints. The smell of roasted garlic and basil filled the air. My stomach gave a treacherous growl loud enough to echo in the empty room. "Your body disagrees," Julian said, pulling a chair up beside me. He loosened his tie, looking tired but relaxed. "Eat. The shadows will still be there tomorrow." I put down my pencil and opened the bag. "You didn't have to stay, Julian. You're the CEO. You can leave whenever you want." "And leave my best designer to starve?" He opened his own container of pasta. "I don't think so." I smiled, taking a bite. "I'm still a junior consultant, remember?" "Not for long," he said seriously. He looked at me, his eyes scanning my face. "You've changed in the last 3 months, Alara. You're sharper. Stronger." I unconsciously pulled my oversized woolen cardigan tighter around my waist. My baby bump was small, but it was there. I'd been buying clothes 2 sizes too big, claiming I was just exploring a bohemian style. I had to change, I said quietly. "Survival instinct." "You never talk about it," he said, twirling his fork. "The life you had before you walked into that diner. You never mention family." No husband, no boyfriend? My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to tell him about Gavin, about the betrayal, about the baby growing inside me, but fear stopped me. If Julian knew I was a pregnant, homeless divorcee with baggage, would he still look at me with that respect? I prefer to look forward, I said, meeting his gaze. The past is just dead weight. Julian held my look for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Well, looking forward, I have news. The board approved the Skyline project this afternoon. I dropped my fork. They did? But Vicky said the budget was too high. They didn't care about the budget, Julian grinned. They cared about the vision, your vision. We break ground next month. I did it, I whispered. We did it, he corrected gently. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. And since the project is greenlit, your commission came through early. I opened the envelope. The check inside made my hand shake. It was more money than Gavin used to give me for a monthly allowance. It was enough. 2 days later, I turned a silver key in a heavy oak door. It's all yours, Ms. Reed, the landlord said, handing me the copy. Rent is paid through the year. Enjoy the view. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I closed the door and locked it a deadbolt, a chain, and a handle lock. Safety. I walked through the empty living room. It wasn't a mansion like the one I shared with Gavin. It was a 2-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and cream-colored walls, but it was mine. No one could kick me out. No one could change the locks. I walked out onto the small balcony. The wind whipped my hair back. I placed both hands on my stomach, no longer hiding. We're home, Leo, I whispered to the baby, using the name I had secretly picked out. We're safe. I looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Gavin was probably sleeping in my old bed, thinking he had won. He thought he had crushed me. He thought I was rotting in a gutter. I took a deep breath of the crisp night air. I felt a fierce burning pride in my chest. I wasn't the crying girl on the wet concrete anymore. I was an architect. I was a mother. I was a survivor. You should have made sure I was dead, Gavin, I said to the wind. Because now I'm coming for you. Elara, stop fidgeting. You belong here. Julian's voice was low beside my ear, grounding me. I took a deep breath and smoothed the silk of my emerald green gown. I'm not fidgeting, I lied, though my knuckles were white against my clutch bag. I'm just adjusting. It's been a long time since I wore a dress like this. You look incredible, he said, offering me his arm. That color suits you. It's dangerous. I looked down at the dress. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't an apology present from a guilty husband. I had walked into the boutique, swiped my own debit card, and paid for it with money I earned from the Skyline project. Thanks, I smiled, taking his arm. Let's go inside. The ballroom was swimming in golden light and the soft hum of string music. Waiters circulated with crystal trays of champagne. I took a glass, feeling the cool condensation against my fingers. I expected to feel like an imposter, like the homeless woman who slept in a motel 3 months ago, but I didn't. I felt tall. I need to say hello to the mayor, Julian said, squeezing my hand gently. Will you be okay for 2 minutes? I'll be fine, I assured him. Go. He walked away and I turned to scan the room. That's when I saw the flash of a familiar red tie. My stomach dropped. Gavin was standing near the dessert table. But he didn't look like the polished, arrogant man who had thrown me out. His suit looked wrinkled like he had worn it 2 days in a row. His hair was messy. Beside him, Lila was aggressively whispering something, her face twisted in a scowl. I told you not to drink that much. I heard Lila hiss from 20 feet away. Shut up, Lila, Gavin snapped back, loud enough for people to turn their heads. I'm networking. You're embarrassing us, she shot back. I watched them, fascinated. They looked miserable. Then Gavin turned. His eyes swept the room and landed on me. He blinked once, twice. His jaw actually dropped. He pushed past Layla, ignoring her protest, and walked straight toward me. I didn't run, I didn't hide. I took a sip of champagne and waited. Elora? He asked, stopping 2 feet away. He smelled like scotch. Is that you? Hello, Gavin, I said. My voice was steady. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on the emerald dress and the diamond earrings fake, but he didn't know that dangling from my ears. What are you doing here? He demanded. His shock was quickly replaced by suspicion. Tickets to this gala are $5,000 a plate. I know, I said coolly. The lobster is excellent. Don't play games with me, he sneered, stepping closer. He reached out and grabbed my upper arm, his fingers digging in. Who is he? Which old desperate man did you find to pay for all this? I knew you were a gold digger. Let go of me, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously low whisper. Tell me. He hissed, shaking my arm slightly. You were homeless. You were nothing without me. You're clearly sleeping your way back to the middle. I said, let go. I yanked my arm back. I didn't stumble. I stood my ground. I didn't find a man to save me, Gavin, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I saved myself. I bought this dress with my own money. I bought my ticket with my own money. I earned my place here. Something you wouldn't understand since you only know how to steal. You lying bit, is there a problem here? The voice was deep and commanded instant silence. Julian stepped up beside me. He didn't look at Gavin. He looked at me, checking for injuries. Gavin took a step back, recognizing Julian immediately. Everyone knew Julian Vance. Mr. Vance, Gavin stammered, his face paling. I was just speaking to my wife. Ex-wife, I corrected sharply. I don't care who she is to you, Julian said, his eyes finally turning to Gavin. They were cold as ice. You are bothering my guest. Guest? Gavin let out a nervous, incredulous laugh. She's my lead architect. Julian interrupted, his voice booming slightly so the nearby guests could hear. She's the reason my company's stock has tripled in the last quarter. And if you touch her again, I will have security throw you out the back door. Gavin looked at Julian, then at me. Lead architect? That's right, I said, stepping closer to Julian. I'm not the woman you threw in the rain anymore, Gavin. I'm the woman who is designing the future of this city. Lila appeared at Gavin's elbow, looking between us with wide, fearful eyes. Gavin, let's go. People are staring. Gavin looked like he had been punched in the gut. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He looked small. Enjoy the party, I said, turning my back on him. As Julian led me away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew the look on his face perfectly, and it was better than any revenge I could have planned. Did you hear? The whisper came from the break room. Gavin's firm defaulted on another loan. They say he's liquidating assets just to make payroll. I kept walking, clutching my coffee mug. I knew he was desperate. I just didn't know how desperate until I reached my desk. It's gone, I said aloud, staring at the empty docking station. What's gone? I spun around. Julian was standing there, holding a file. My laptop, I said, my stomach tightening. And the backup drive I keep in the drawer, it's all gone. I sat down and frantically logged into the cloud server from the desktop. Project Skyline, folder empty. Files deleted. 7:45 a.m. Someone wiped it, I whispered, feeling the blood drain from my face. Months of work. The structural schematics, the vendor lists. Julian, it's all gone. Julian's face went hard. Who was in the building this early? I looked across the open plan office. Vicky was sitting at her desk, aggressively typing. She took a sip of her tea and looked over the rim of the mug. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of the cat that had just eaten the canary. Old Alara would have run to the bathroom to cry. She would have panicked, but I wasn't her anymore. Get security, I said, standing up, now. 10 minutes later, we were in the small, windowless server room. Mike, the head of IT, was typing furiously. I can recover the server files, Mike said without looking up. It'll take a few hours, but nothing is ever really deleted. But the laptop? That's physical theft. Show me the cameras, Julian commanded. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. The large screen flickered. We watched the grain footage in silence. At 7:15 a.m., the elevator doors opened. Vicky walked out. She looked around, ensuring the coast was clear, then walked straight to my desk. She unplugged my laptop, grabbed the drive, and shoved them into her large tote bag. I knew it, I hissed. Keep watching, Mike said. On the screen, Vicky took the elevator down to the parking garage. A black sedan was waiting in the shadows. The window rolled down. Vicky handed the bag through the window. The driver handed her a thick white envelope. Julian leaned in closer to the screen. Is that? Pause it, I said. The image froze. The driver's face was blurry, but I knew that profile anywhere. I knew the way he held his cigarette. It's Gavin, I said, my voice cold. He bought her. Julian didn't say a word. He turned on his heel and marched out of the room. I followed him. We walked straight to Vicky's desk. Pack your things, Julian said loudly. The entire office went silent. Vicky jumped. Excuse me? You're fired, Julian said, and don't bother asking for a reference. We have you on tape handing company property to a competitor. Vicky's face turned the color of ash. He said he just wanted to look. He said he'd pay me. Get out, Julian roared. Before I drag you out. Vicky scrambled to grab her purse, sobbing as she ran toward the elevators. An hour later, a tall man in a rumpled trench coat walked into Julian's office. He flashed a badge. Detective Vance, he said, shaking my hand. Mr. Vance told me you had a robbery? We have more than that, I said, handing him a USB drive with the footage. We have corporate espionage, grand larceny, and bribery. Detective Vance plugged the drive into his tablet and watched the clip. He let out a low whistle. Is that your ex-husband? Vance asked, pointing to the man in the car. Yes, I said. He's trying to destroy me. Well, Vance said, closing the tablet with a satisfying click. He just handed us the hammer to nail his coffin shut. Stealing intellectual property over a certain value is a felony, Miss Reed. I'm going to need a full statement. I looked at Julian. He nodded. Let's write it down, I told the detective. I want to make sure I don't miss a single detail. Gavin wanted a war. He just didn't realize he had already lost. The video of the handoff is good, Detective Vance said, tapping his pen on the desk. But it's circumstantial. A good lawyer could argue he didn't know the laptop was stolen. To nail him for the forgery and the inheritance theft, I need a confession. I'll get it, I said immediately. Elara, no, Julian said, stepping in front of me. His face was pale. He's desperate. He could be dangerous. I'm not sending you into a room with him. He's not dangerous, Julian. He's arrogant, I said, wrapping a thick woolen scarf around my neck. He thinks he's already won. If I go there looking defeated, he won't be able to resist bragging about how he beat me. It's a bad idea, Julian insisted, looking at the detective for backup. It's our best shot, Vance admitted. He handed me a tiny black device. Clip this to your bra strap. The scarf will hide the wire. We'll be in the van outside. If he makes a move, say the word checkmate and we rush in. He won't make a move, I said, clipping the microphone into place. He prefers to hurt people with words. An hour later, I walked into the bistro Gavin had chosen. He was already sitting at a corner table, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand. He looked smug. I sat down, keeping my coat on. I made sure to hunch my shoulders, looking small and beaten. You look terrible, Gavin said by way of greeting. He took a sip of his drink. I assume you're here to beg for your laptop back? I just want it to stop, Gavin, I whispered, staring at the tablecloth. You have the files. You won. Why do you have to keep destroying me? Because you didn't learn your lesson, he sneered. You thought you could embarrass me at the gala? You thought you could be someone? I just wanted what was mine, I said. The house, my parents' money. Your money, he scoffed, leaning forward. You never knew how to manage it. That's why I took it. But the deed, I pressed, my heart hammering against the wire. I never signed it over to you. How did you do it? Gavin laughed, swirling the ice in his glass. You really are clueless. I practiced your signature for weeks, Elara. I signed those transfer papers right in front of you. While you were watching TV, I moved the inheritance to the offshore account before I even filed for divorce. It was the easiest money I ever made. And the laptop? I asked. Did you pay Vicky a lot? $5,000, he bragged. She was cheap. Everyone has a price, Elara. I bought your house, your money, and your career. I own you. I felt a cold, calm wash over me. He had said it, all of it. You think you're so smart, I said, lifting my head. I am smart, he grinned. And you? You were always too stupid to stop me, Elara. I reached for my water glass and took a slow, deliberate sip. I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I set the glass down and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I wasn't stupid, Gavin, I said, my voice clear and strong. I was in love. There is a difference. What? He asked, his brow furrowing. Checkmate, I said. I stood up and grabbed my purse. Where are you going? Gavin demanded, slamming his hand on the table. I'm not done talking to you. No, I said, turning away, but he is. I pointed toward the door. Gavin turned around. His face went white. Detective Vance was walking toward the table, his badge raised high, with 2 uniformed officers behind him. Gavin Reed, Vance's voice boomed across the silent restaurant. You have the right to remain silent. Gavin looked at me, panic finally shattering his arrogance. Alara, what did you do? I stopped you, I said coldly. And for the first time in my life, I walked away while he was the one left screaming. My ex-wife, Alara, is a troubled woman. Gavin's face filled the 60-inch screen in Julian's office. He was standing behind a podium, surrounded by reporters. He had been out on bail for less than 4 hours, and he was already trying to rewrite the narrative. He looked calm, polished, and completely innocent. She has struggled with mental health issues for years, Gavin continued, looking directly into the camera with fake sympathy. The accusations of fraud? The stolen laptop? It is all a fabrication. A desperate cry for attention from a woman who couldn't handle the end of our marriage. I sat on the edge of the leather sofa, gripping my tea mug so hard my knuckles turned white. He's good, I whispered. He almost sounds like he believes it. He's a sociopath, Julian said from his desk. He was hovering his finger over the enter key on his laptop. He thinks he can charm his way out of a felony charge. I am suing for defamation, Gavin said on the screen, his voice rising with righteous indignation. And I will not let these lies destroy the company I built with my own 2 hands. Are you ready? Julian asked, looking at me. Once we upload this, there is no going back. It will be everywhere. I looked at Gavin's lying face one last time. Do it. Julian tapped the key. File uploaded. The _truth_Gavin_Reed.mp3. We waited. For 2 minutes, the news continued. Then a reporter in the crowd looked down at her phone. Her eyes went wide. She whispered to the cameraman. Another reporter checked his tablet. A murmur rippled through the press conference. Mr. Reed, a journalist shouted, interrupting Gavin. Is it true you admitted to forging your wife's signature on a hidden recording? Gavin froze. What? No. That is ridiculous. It's trending on Twitter, sir, another reporter yelled. The audio clip. You admit to paying a saboteur. You admit to the theft. We watched Gavin's face crumble in real time. The confidence evaporated, replaced by the terrified, pale look of a trapped animal. He tried to stammer an excuse, but the reporters swarmed him, shouting questions. The feed cut to a technical difficulties screen. I need to go there, I said, standing up. To the station? Julian asked. To his office, I said. I need to see it end. The scene outside Gavin's office building was chaos. Police cars were blocking the street and men in suits were carrying boxes out the front door. Asset seizure. The bank had moved fast. I stood on the sidewalk watching the Lumina Design sign being taken down. It felt like a weight was being lifted off my chest, pound by pound. Alara? The voice was weak and trembling. I looked down. Sitting on the concrete steps, hugging a cardboard box, was Lila. She looked nothing like the woman who had smirked at me in my own hallway. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. Her expensive coat was missing a button. She looked small. Lila, I said, stopping in front of her. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. He kicked me out, she sobbed. As soon as the news broke, he screamed at me. He said I was bad luck. He said it was my fault he got caught because I didn't distract you enough. He needed someone to blame, I said quietly. That's what he does. I have nowhere to go, Lila cried, clutching the box tighter. He put everything in his name. I don't have any money. The police seized the accounts. Alara, please? You know what this feels like. You know how scary it is. She reached out, trying to grab the hem of my coat. Help me, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at her hand, the same hand that had held the wine glass while she mocked me. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was distant, cold. I do know what it feels like, I said, stepping back so she couldn't touch me. I slept on a park bench because of you. I was just doing what he told me, she wailed. I thought he loved me. He doesn't love anyone, Lila, I said, my voice steady. He only loves ownership. Please, she whispered. Just a place to stay, for one night. I looked at the seizing agents locking the doors. I looked at the ruin of the life that used to be mine. I don't hate you, Lila, I said, looking her in the eye. You are just another victim of his greed. But I don't have to save you. I turned around and walked back toward Julian's car, leaving her sitting on the cold concrete exactly where she had left me. Mrs. Reed, is it not true that you have a history of emotional instability? Gavin's lawyer, a man with slicked back hair and a cruel smile, leaned against the witness stand. He was trying to rattle me. No, I said clearly into the microphone. That is not true. But you abandoned your marital home, he pressed, pacing in front of the jury. You left in the middle of the night without a word. Does that sound like a stable woman to you? I didn't abandon my home, I said, gripping the railing. I looked past the lawyer straight at Gavin. He was sitting at the defense table. He looked small. His suit was cheap and ill-fitting, bunching at the shoulders. He was sweating, wiping his forehead with a crumpled tissue. I was thrown out. I was locked out in the rain with nothing but the clothes on my back. Objection, the lawyer shouted. The witness is emotional. Overruled, Judge Miller said. His voice was deep and stern. He looked over his glasses at me. Continue, Mrs. Reed. I took a deep breath. I turned to the jury. 12 strangers who held my future in their hands. I didn't leave because I was unstable, I told them. I left because my husband stole my inheritance. He forged my signature. I spent nights sleeping in a motel that smelled like bleach and smoke. I scrubbed the dishes in a diner until my hands bled just to buy food. I wasn't hysterical, I was homeless, and he laughed about it. The courtroom went silent. I saw a woman in the jury wipe a tear from her eye. Gavin stared at the table, refusing to look at me. No further questions, the lawyer muttered, sitting down. The hours dragged on. The evidence was presented, the audio recording, the bank transfers, the video of the laptop theft. It was a mountain of greed that buried him. Finally, Judge Miller returned. The bailiff shouted, "All rise." My heart hammered against my ribs. Julian reached over the barrier and squeezed my hand. In the matter of the state versus Gavin Reed, Judge Miller began, reading from the paper. On the count of grand larceny, we find the defendant guilty. Gavin flinched like he had been slapped. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of corporate espionage, guilty. No, Gavin whispered. Gavin Reed, Judge Miller said, removing his glasses. You preyed on the person who trusted you most. You are sentenced to 10 years in state prison, effective immediately. The gavel banged. A sound of finality. 10 years? Gavin screamed, jumping up. You can't do this. I'm a businessman. 2 bailiffs grabbed his arms. They pulled his hands behind his back. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the room. Alara, Gavin shouted, twisting around to look at me. His eyes were wild. Tell them who I am. I made you. You were nothing before me. I built you. I stood up slowly. I walked to the edge of the aisle as they dragged him past me. No, Gavin, I said, my voice calm and deadly quiet. You tried to bury me. You forgot I was a seed. He stared at me, mouth open, as the heavy door swung shut behind him. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I can't do this. I screamed, my voice cracking under the strain. The pain was a tidal wave, crushing everything in its path. I gripped the metal railing of the hospital bed so hard I thought it might bend. Yes, you can, Julian said. He was right there, his face close to mine. He wasn't disgusted by the sweat or the screaming. He was calm. Look at me, Ilara. You are the strongest person I know. You built a skyscraper. You can do this. It hurts, Julian. I sobbed, squeezing his hand until my knuckles turned white. It hurts so much. I know, he soothed, wiping my forehead with a cool cloth. But you're almost there. Just one more push, do it for him. Okay, I gasped. Okay. On 3, Ilara? Dr. Hayes commanded from the foot of the bed. 1, 2, 3 push. I shut my eyes and gave everything I had left. I poured every ounce of anger, fear, and hope into that moment. And then the world changed. A sharp, piercing cry filled the sterile room. He's here, Julian whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Ilara, he's here. The pain vanished, replaced by a rush of adrenaline. Dr. Hayes placed a small, warm weight on my chest. I looked down. He was tiny. His skin was flushed pink and his fists were clenched tight, ready to fight the world. He opened his eyes, deep, dark brown eyes, my eyes. Leo, I choked out, the tears flowing freely now. My little lion. I brushed my finger against his cheek. He turned his head and settled against me, quieting down. As I held him, a realization hit me harder than the labor pains. I thought about the night Gavin threw me out. I thought about the rain, the cold concrete, and the despair. I had thought my life was over. But if Gavin hadn't been a monster, if he hadn't kicked me out, I would still be in that cold, empty house. I would be raising this beautiful boy in a loveless marriage, walking on eggshells, teaching him to be afraid. Thank you, I whispered to the universe. The pain was the price of my freedom. And looking at Leo, I knew it was a bargain. Julian leaned over and kissed my forehead. He looked at Leo with an expression of pure, unconditional love. He didn't see Gavin's son, he saw our future. He's perfect, Julian said softly, stroking Leo's tiny hand with his thumb. He's mine, I said, looking up at Julian. And I don't know how to do this alone. Julian smiled, squeezing my shoulder. You aren't alone, Elara, not anymore. You promise? I asked, my voice trembling. I promise, he said firmly. We are going to be a family, Elara, you, me, and Leo. I looked at the two men in my life, one who saved me and one I would save. I finally closed my eyes and let myself believe him. Good morning, Ms. Reed. The contractors are on line 1. Tell them I'll call back, Sarah, I said, walking past my assistant's desk. I need 5 minutes. Of course. The new signage looks beautiful, she smiled. It does, I agreed. I glanced at the bronze plaque on the door, Vance and Reed. It wasn't just a name. It was a victory flag. I closed the heavy glass door and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Below me, the city bustled. I could see the curve of the skyline project, my design gleaming in the sun. It stood taller than anything around it. BZZT. My phone vibrated in my hand. I looked down at the screen. Bank alert, deposit received. $2,450,000. Reference, asset seizure restitution. I stared at the number. It was the inheritance Gavin had stolen. Every cent returned with interest. It's over, I whispered to the empty room. I remembered begging Mrs. Higgins for a discount at the motel. I remembered counting pennies for a cup of coffee. Now I was a millionaire again. But looking at the screen, I didn't feel relief about the money. I felt relief that the tether to Gavin was finally cut. I looked at my reflection in the window. I didn't see a victim. I saw a partner. A mother. You tried to burn me down, I said to the ghost of my past. But fire just clears the way for new growth. The door opened behind me. Knock, knock, a deep voice called out. I turned around. Julian was standing there, holding a wiggling baby in a blue onesie. We got tired of waiting in the lobby, Julian grinned. Someone was hungry, Mama. Leo shrieked, waving his chubby fist. Hi, my love, I cooed, rushing over to take him. He felt warm and solid in my arms. Did you get the alert? Julian asked, nodding at my phone on the desk. I did, I nodded. It's all back. How does it feel? He asked softly. I looked at the phone, then at Julian, then at Leo's bright eyes. It feels like ... it doesn't matter. I smiled. I have everything I need right here. Julian wrapped his arm around my waist. Lunch? Let's go, I said. I walked out of the office, leaving the phone on the desk. I stepped into the hallway holding my son, walking toward the rest of my life. I was finally free.